Welcome to today's news briefing relative to the spillway incident. Speaking today will be Acting Director of Department of Water Resources, Bill Croyle, along with Butte County Sheriff Corey L. Honey.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see you all here again. Today, what I'd like to do is focus a little bit on what transpired with the Butte County Sheriff's Office and other public safety responders during the course of the evacuation. We are now beginning to catch up and understand all of the activity that was going on and getting a better perspective of what's going on. As the days go forward, of course, we will refine that and get even better understanding of all of the activity that was conducted by first responders during the evacuation period. As you may know, the Butte County Sheriff's Office, which includes my headquarters, our emergency dispatch center, the jail, was within the area where mandatory evacuations, or the mandatory evacuation order was issued. That necessitated the evacuation of the Butte County Sheriff's Office and those facilities on that complex. That's a pretty unprecedented thing and obviously presented some real challenges to us. As I said, we evacuated our headquarters, our dispatch center, and our patrol operations and jail. We were doing this while coordinating the evacuations and the response of mutual aid coming in to assist us. And I got to tell you that in the days that have passed since the order was reduced from a mandatory evacuation to an evacuation warning, I've had an opportunity to go through and talk with my various staff members and get a better understanding of what was going on during that period of time. I am very proud of our local public safety responders, my staff, as well as law enforcement officers from other agencies in Butte County and other agencies throughout the state, medical responders, fire responders. They did an incredible job. As I told you, our dispatch center was evacuated. We sent dispatchers up to the Butte County Sheriff's Substation in Chico, as well as dispatchers to the Chico Police Department. We transferred our 911 calls to the Chico Police Department. And between the dispatchers at the Chico Police Department and the dispatchers at the substation, we coordinated dispatch operations and communications for that entire evacuation. It was a monumental task. In addition to that, our patrol headquarters was evacuated, and our patrol staff, who were out conducting investigations and conducting law enforcement operations, were doing it from the field. One of the, in my view, more amazing feats was that we were able to evacuate the jail, some 578 inmates, and send them down to the Alameda County Jail in Santa Rita. And on those 2 points, I certainly want to thank Chief Mike O'Brien from the Chico Police Department for opening his center up to us. And I want to thank Sheriff Greg Ahern from the Alameda County Sheriff's Office for accommodating all of those inmates. During the course of the evacuation and during that period of time that we were under the mandatory evacuation, we received mutual aid support from agencies all over the state. That support included hundreds of law enforcement officers throughout Butte County that were deployed throughout Butte County during the evacuation period. This allowed us to patrol the evacuated areas as well as provide law enforcement services to those areas of the county that was not evacuated. The information that I have today is that we received 240 calls for service. Those included crimes in progress, as well as welfare checks and crimes for assistance of people needing help get evacuated. After having an opportunity to review and hear from my staff about what was going on during that process, I have a better understanding of the kind of criminal activity that my deputies and other law enforcement officers were dealing with. As you know from our previous press conferences, I told you that there were burglaries and thefts in addition to at least one violent crime that we were able to solve, and I'll explain that in a minute. The information I had prior to that was that we didn't have any looting, but now that my staff has had a better opportunity to talk with me, we find that a couple of those burglary or theft-related crimes, we can charge, and I've talked with the district attorney, the individuals responsible for that with an enhancement of looting, which is a good thing because it increases the maximum sentence that the individuals responsible for those crimes could receive. And as I've told you before, the district attorney, Mike Ramsey, and I are committed to prosecuting anybody responsible for crime-related thefts or violent crimes during the course of this to the fullest extent of the law. There are three specific incidents that I think are noteworthy. We'll be issuing a press release on all three of those here shortly. And what we'll do is I'll let that press release out, and I will be then available to talk with you individually about those cases if you want. But at this point, I'd like to turn the conference over to the acting director so that he can give you an update on what is going on with regard to the dam and the spillway and our efforts to bring that situation under control, which is the situation that is at hand. That's what's important right now. But before I do so, I want to continue to remind people we're still operating under an emergency situation. There is always the risk there is always the potential that if the risk increases, we could go back to the level requiring an immediate evacuation. And so to that end, I would ask that people sign up for our emergency notification system so that we can communicate with you and be prepared. Do the things that you need to do to be prepared so that if that happens, we're all in a much, much better shape. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Again, Bill Croyle with the California Department of Water Resources. What I want to do this morning is give you an update on the progress we've made and reducing our risk. Again, I want to remind people, as the Sheriff said, we're focused on maximizing public safety, reducing risk, and I think you'll find by my discussion and briefing today that we are making significant progress in that line. But first of all, I'd like to reiterate what the Sheriff has just said, is that this is a wet season. We're setting historic hydrology throughout the state, being our snowpack's very high, our rivers and reservoirs are very high. So whether you're here in Oroville and downstream, I think really throughout the Central Valley in California, this is a good time of year to think about that, be prepared, listen to your emergency managers, and respond appropriately. I'd like to thank, again, the community of Oroville, but also the other communities affected by the evacuation notice, because their response to this directive to evacuate safely saved lives. It's a very hard decision for all of us to provide that information to the Sheriff to make that decision, but as shown by the response and now the repopulation of those areas is amazing. And I want to make sure that for those of us that are working under unified command with our partners CAL FIRE and the Butte County Sheriff's Office and really this community, we'll continue to make that progress in regard. Now I'll start through some of the numbers, which again all of us are monitoring. We have some interesting changes in both our weather as we see today, but I think you'll find as we move through this that we're again really working in the right direction to reduce these risks to this community and those downstream. First of all, our current inflow is about 27,000 cubic feet per second of, again, inflow into the reservoir. We're currently at 80,000 cubic feet per second being released down the flood control spillway. The reservoir elevation is 861 feet. So I think yesterday there was a question on whether we thought we were going to get, or when we would get down to that elevation that I've been mentioning over a couple of these press conferences, and of an elevation of 850 feet. So again, we continue with these releases being higher than the inflow. We continue to remove water from the reservoir, hitting that target. So the water surface of the reservoir at this time is dropping about 4 inches an hour. Again, at these flow rates, that will continue that rate, and it'll drop a little faster as the reservoir pool gets a little lower. But we are going to change. As mentioned yesterday and the day before, we're continuing to monitor our incoming weather, our conditions of our spillway, the conditions of the diversion pool, the water level up against the Hyatt power plant, and we indicated that we would reduce flows from 100 to 80,000 CFS, and we're about to do the same today. We're going to do that so that we can, again, because of the hydrology and the reservoir operations, we're making great progress in making that void space within that reservoir able to handle the incoming weather. But that allows us also to get in and make some more progress on the debris pile at the toe of the flood control spillway. So at 1 o'clock today, we're going to change the discharge of the spillway down from 80,000 CFS, cubic feet per second, to 70. Well, like yesterday, we'll do that in 5,000 Q steps down every 2 hours until we get down to 70,000 cubic feet per second. The alerts go out, as the sheriff indicated. Again, I want to remind people that's just the way that we're informing our various agencies, and so please don't be alarmed by that. That's part of our process that we use when we're making changes on the reservoir. So as we reduce the flow from the spillway, then those alerts will go out, just so we're all informed on the changes in water level down below the flood control structure, all the way down into the river. This will also help our levee conditions downstream as that water comes off those levees, and that gives them time to kind of stabilize to maintain those structures throughout the system. Our plan is to continue to monitor like we have been. We have additional cameras, additional people to reinforce our monitoring strategy. Again, as we go through a changed condition, the spillway has been stable through this entire process for a number of days. That's a good thing. That means that as we make these changes, again, we can feel confident in our ability to use that spillway not only this week, but on into the future. Now, when I say that, again, as I said yesterday, Mother Nature's in the room, and so we're constantly monitoring and looking for changes, and we have contingency plans to address that. Our plan, to the extent that that is a successful reduction in flow, is we'll reevaluate. So we'll carry that flow overnight, wait for the sun to come out, put our inspectors back in place, fly the drones in and around the area to reevaluate the stability of the site, and then move down again to 60,000 CFS. Now, probably mid-morning, subject to the input of the technical resources that we have in play, to make sure, again, we're doing that under a stable environment. Okay, that's the key. So this is actually important because we can't maintain the flows of 80,000 CFS and properly operate the spillway. It's almost like we could run out of water within the reservoir, and so we want to make sure that we protect our system. You know, our goal is removing the water, but we're going to do that in a way that maintains the integrity of our system and it remains stable. And so we do and have considered, and do consider the water coming in to this from this storm event we're having today, but also the one that we're hearing about on Monday and Tuesday. Okay, that's important. There's a lot of concern over that, but I would suggest that the reason why we make so much effort to remove water from the reservoir is to allow these kinds of storms to come into the reservoir. We don't see a threat really in any way to getting into a condition we were at the top of the spillway of 901. The models at this time suggest an elevation quite a bit lower. In fact, it's just slightly above the elevation we have now. And so, again, we'll be forecasting that every 6 hours to make sure that we understand as we drop the the release from the reservoir, that we understand the water surface elevation on the front of the dam. So again, weather can change, but I believe based on our model runs and our actions that we're taking now, we shouldn't actually see much of a change in the water surface elevation behind the dam, which is a good thing. Because what this reduction in flow also allows us to do is start working on the debris pile at the bottom of the spillway. So they started that activity at 8 o'clock this morning. We've already seen reductions on the water that's holding up against the Hyatt power plant by about 2.5 feet, almost 3 feet. With the more aggressive activities that we can take on the debris pile, that will drop that water faster. If we can make some good progress at the 70 or 60,000 cubic feet per second, in other words, getting closer with more equipment, then we believe that water surface will drop faster. That allows us to get the waterproofing at the Hyatt plant, remove that, and work on getting that plant back into operation. That may take us a few days to a week, as long as everything is going in the right direction. We will, on a regular basis, reconsider the discharge or that release down the emergency or the flood control spillway, so that if we need to make further reductions or increases in that flow to maintain reservoir level operations. So that's an important part. We can go up or we'll go down. We do have a number of technical expertise that are looking at the spillway to maintain its stability, and we have good, healthy discussion about what that means. In other words, is there more erosion, or what would we do if there is additional erosion of that spillway? So it has been stable, and we're confident that we can move through this step from 70 to 60 and probably hold through the duration of this storm. So I think that's an important part, as that allows us, again, to put in our mitigation measures and address getting our power plant back up and running. That both has short-term benefits and, of course, long-term benefits for water supply for this region. Let's see, the emergency spillway activities continue. I'm amazed that we have aircraft in the air today, which is a good thing. So again, we continue to aggressively attack that area, address those 4 priority sites. So again, priority 1 site is 100% complete. Priority 2 site is 50% complete. Priority 3 site is 75%, and priority 4 site is 90%. So again, we continue to attack that area on the ground and from the air. So even through this wet weather we're having now, we will keep pushing to reinforce that area should we ever have to use that structure this year. I think it's important to recognize there's a lot of various agency and contractors out there working through this effort, and I think they're focused on their public safety mission by keeping their energy focused on that site to get that in a condition that is acceptable. I understand that there's some concern about what this rain is doing to the concrete that's being placed or the grout, and we do not see that as an issue. Again, the concrete's placed, it cures fairly quickly. If there's some of the surface concrete is affected by the rainfall, then that's, again, we have those people in place and can address that. I do not see the threat of this rain impacting our ability to, again, place a rock, place a grout in concrete, and perform its function as designed. Again, our focus, priority focus for us today, especially as we reduce those flows down the flood control spillway, is to aggressively attack the debris pile at the bottom of that. So again, we have that equipment in place, and we look forward to placing more equipment on the water to attack the debris flow from the water side. So with that, Mike?
Yeah, take questions here. We'll start with Brian.
Sheriff, the AP has reported that there was a memo from DWR to the feds in 2011 saying that if the main dam itself failed, there would not be enough time to evacuate Oroville. As the agency that would be likely the point of agency on that,
Yeah.
do you accept that scenario? Is it a scenario you can even plan for?
Well, clearly that would be a daunting challenge, and I think evidenced by what we were looking at before, it's a very, very daunting challenge. That is why we're taking steps now to refine our notification plan and our evacuation plan, potential evacuation routes, in hopes that we can give people more time to exit the area should that happen. Let's be clear, the things that we're dealing with are very serious, and that's why I've continued to say time and time again that this is still an emergency situation. There is still risk. People need to be prepared, and we're monitoring the situation very, very, very closely.
Back, Chelsea.
It may be an isolated incident, Sheriff, but there's a woman who I spoke with in Orville who was a caregiver for a woman in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
And she said she called repeatedly for about 3 hours to try to get some help.
Okay.
And was unable to get anything. Do you know why that might be?
Well, not exactly. I mean, obviously, that was a very, very chaotic night. The fact that we had to move our dispatch center, relocate our dispatch center up to Chico from into our Chico substation and into the Chico Police Department to coordinate that. And I suspect strongly that there was an extremely high call volume. Obviously, my preference would have been to be able to answer and respond to every single call. But you understand the chaos of that night, and I think we were doing our absolute best under the circumstances. But it goes back to what I talked to a moment ago in terms of learning from this last event. Hopefully we can refine that, and that goes squarely to why I went from a mandatory evacuation to an evacuation warning. Because individuals who would have a difficult time evacuating when the order is issued, if that is necessary, should make arrangements, or we should accommodate that ahead of time so that that situation that you just described wouldn't happen in the future. So certainly that's something we're looking at.
Mr. Bayer.
Hi there. Today, Bill, we noticed on the spillway, there's a flow of muddy water coming down the side. Can you describe what that is? I didn't notice that yesterday, the days before. And there's a lot of people out there looking at it. Is it a cause for concern? And then I also wanted to have you describe how exactly they're removing that debris.
I can tell you what I know. And so I'm not sure exactly what muddy water you're talking about on the side of the spillway. You're talking about the flood control structure?
Yes, the main
Yeah.
structure to the left, there's quite a big stream of water coming
Yeah.
down the side.
There's a lot of water moving down our spillway. And I think, again, first of all, there's a lot of energy that's been focused down that area, and that's kind of dynamic. As we change things, that's part of what we're monitoring. So there's some erosion anticipated. It's just the normal flow off that damaged structure down into the debris pile at the bottom in the diversion pool. That being said, it hasn't been raining for a number of days. We've had amazing weather here in the last 3 or 4 days, which have allowed us to get in, do some of that work, enhance our monitoring, and develop our contingency plans. It is raining. You're going to have erosion with this kind of rain moving off the site. Our monitoring teams are monitoring that. Again, the site has been stable, which is good news. Whether it's erosion due to the rainfall that we're having today, or erosion, whether it's as a part of the water moving down the flood control structure, I can't answer that.
And then the debris.
But the debris at the moment is land-based from the west side of the diversion pool, using excavators to basically scoop that material out of the diversion pool and move that onto trucks and remove it from the area. So again, we're going to work along the west side of the channel, because that's where we have access. And the idea there is, of course, to open that channel up and get more water that's flowing in the backwater up, that's pressing against the Hyatt powerhouse downstream, so that'll lower that pool. And then lowering that pool again allows us more access to more material. So we'll continue to dig on that channel until it's safe to float the barges on the water, and then we can again take the water side attack on that large debris pile.
Billy Times.
Sheriff.
Yes, sir.
When will the inmates be returning?
We're actually working on that plan right now. Getting them there was under a extremely tense situation. It was emergency. We we're able to move those inmates down there in considering the task a relatively short period of time. But there was a balance between expediency and security that night. Bringing them back, we're not under the same emergency pressure, so we want to increase the level of security. We're in the process of gathering up the necessary transport vans from our allied agencies. They're going to assist us with that. And then we should have those inmates back in our jail the beginning of next week.
Right up here.
Yes, sir.
So I was wondering if cavitation is a possible culprit in what caused this incident of the spillway, and if, you know, that's being studied as a possible cause at this point.
The cause of the flood control spillway is under investigation. So we've started that process from day one. We've had a wide variety of both technical people, third-party consultants, both regulatory agencies are all on call. It's going to be a long time, in my opinion, before we can get access to that site and better understand the dynamics of what may have caused that. So we really can't speak to cavitation, erosion, or any of the other potential failure modes that caused this. It's going to be a while. There'll be plenty of time, I think, as those studies are completed. That'll be part of the vetting process, and certainly as that information is made available, that'll go. But it's going to be a while. Again, right now we're focused on a response and reducing the risk to this community. As I said earlier, we're also bringing on, we've had our recovery advance teams on site. They're here again today as they form those teams and bring those technical assets together, both here in this community but also in Sacramento, where we can bring a number of different agencies and third parties together to address the recovery action. But right now it's way too early for us to really get in and try to figure out what actually caused it. We need our own people, we need our own, the regulators involved, we need these third party. We're going to learn a lot from this incident, and I think it's a good time to make sure we know everything we can about this environment, because there's been recent federal legislation that allows really to improve dam infrastructure, and so we're looking at this in a way that we can benefit throughout our dam critical infrastructure community to make sure that everyone is doing everything we can to assess our infrastructure and improve it as necessary.
Fox 40.
We've heard a number of agencies are prepared for it, but I'm just wondering what your feeling is on the likelihood of further evacuations potentially this weekend, and also wondering if there are any resources available for people whose homes or businesses have already been flooded so far.
With regard to the threat of evacuation this weekend,
Leading up to Monday and Tuesday as well.
Again, we've been working very hard with the resource, within the infrastructure that we have in place here, to reduce the water level behind the lake back to a level that we would normally operate this facility. So again, we're approaching that number now, which is 850 feet. So we have generated a large volume of flood storage space to the extent that we can take on a very large storm. So with that being said, again, Mother Nature's in the room, but I do not expect that to be a risk. But things can change. That's why we have a very close communication, our monitoring teams between our incident commanders to make sure that we have all eyes on this and we're ready to take action with our mitigation plan. I don't see that that's a risk at this time, but having said that, we're ready. The reservoir, the flood pool that's available to us, the operation of our ability to move water through the flood control structure, it's in place, and we will use it to make sure that we don't get back into a position that we were before.
The last question, ABC 10 next.
There's a number of contractors, private.
Can I, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do, just before we do that, and I appreciate everything that Bill said on that. To your point though, DWR has been doing a lot to prevent that from happening, and those are all the things that Bill said. I agree with him based on everything that I have seen and been told and heard from DWR as well as subject matter experts outside DWR, that the likelihood is low. But, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but that's my job. My job is to keep people prepared. So they've got to pay attention, they've got to be vigilant, they've got to be prepared, they've got to sign up for their emergency warning notification system. And if you're tired of hearing me say that, I'm sorry, but I'm going to keep saying it until this situation is well past us. Okay?
ABC 10.
There's a number of people that have been brought in to work on the private contractors and such, and since earlier this week, a number of them have been let go. Can you elaborate on why?
I can't elaborate on why any specific contractor has. In emergency operations, under our unified command, we're going to expand and contract to address the priorities at hand. And so if we need more helicopters, we order more helicopters. When we're done with certain types of helicopters, or we don't need them anymore, or even if the priorities are such for the use of that equipment is changed, then those helicopters may leave. We can only get so many pieces of equipment into certain areas. So like as an example, on the emergency spillway, we had 4 different areas that were priorities that we had to work on. But as those particular priority sites are addressed, then the resources needed in mass to address all of the sites is reduced. So once priority site 1 is done, which is 100%, then we don't need those additional resources unless we refocus those over there. But there's only so much room to work down there, so that would be where we would reduce those, in that case, construction resources. Part of the technical work was, again, we're bringing everyone in, eyes on this thing. We need to better understand the situation so we as a unified command can make decisions on resource management, priority setting, and action planning. Again, so when we, up front, we're going to throw everything at it until we can stabilize the site, and then we will continue to peel off resources that we don't need, or we may bring in other resources like we have to start the advanced planning and ultimately the recovery of this site.
When will the powerhouse?
No,
be
thanks. Wait, that was the last question. We're going to have, just like we normally do this, Mike, Mike has an announcement about tomorrow's press conference?
Yes, that concludes today's press briefing. We will be holding an additional press briefing tomorrow at a time and location to be determined. We'll distribute that through our normal means. Thank you.